Edith Otieno is known in Kenya as a protagonist and an activist and a strong, defiant woman who stood strongly against certain traditional practices, especially that which was demonstrated at her husband's demise. Edith Wambui demonstrated a sound and a strong person when it comes to defending one part of argument, that is the English common law, which in support is taking care of the choices people do make and the freedom of individuals to make decisions on how they would like their bodies to be buried, or better, their remains to be disposed after their death. Professor John W. Van Doren from Law College of Florida University in the United States of America in 1988 wrote an article with the title, quote, "Death in Style in Africa, S.M. Otieno's Case in Kenya." And in this article, the scholar digs deeper into whatever took place in Kenya back then. This is the case that was unique, and was uniquely followed as well by many, not only in Kenya and not only in the wider Africa, but also in diaspora and by non-Africans alike. It also revealed that many non-Africans, in terms of decency, like talking about African issues, African values, African history, and also digging deeper into the African civilization than Africans, especially in the African continent. But why this matter becoming so interesting for us for this conversation is a different story altogether. It is so interesting for us insofar as it is part and parcel of establishing the African jurisprudence and its development in the recent years. It is also very interesting to us because of removing and dismissing certain odds and some misunderstandings that people have around the African legal thought or African legal philosophy and African theories. By dismissing such important issues pertaining to a people known as Africans may not be so helpful today, because we live in a world in which identity is becoming an issue, not only in multiracial, multi-ethnic, and very diverse nations such as the United States of America, where, of course, we have realized that there is a real issue when it comes to critical racial theory and how races sometimes get into conflict. And this is again calling for more identity, as races and different people are seeking to know one another for peaceful cohabitation and wider acceptance. And Africans must as well speak about themselves, raising out what would be the African values, African thoughts, African position. I don't agree with some people who believe and uphold the perception that nothing good can come from Africa. I think that narrative is so far a miscalculation and not accurate and should be dismissed forthrightly. Another thing is, we need also to dismiss equally those who think that whatever is from the African culture is already bad, anti-human rights, anti-women, anti-civilization. Not at all. This is somehow very outrageous. Back to the story. Our topic today is about the death and what happened after the death of Edith Wambui, a strong lady whose name in Kenya is remembered by so many people, professionals, scholars, practitioners, and also those who are dominantly referred to as the sages, or the elderly, or those who are versed with African thoughts. Edith Wambui, the widow of the late husband, Silvano Milea Otieno, a criminal lawyer, a prominent lawyer, whose words were like law in the courts of Kenya back then, stood her ground. And her ground was burial must be decided by the spouse of the dead if the couple were rightly married and lived as married couple. Edith stated clearly, and it was demonstrated, that she had prepared with her late husband a graveyard in their homestead in the southern part of Nairobi, Upper Matasia, today under Kajiado County, where they had chosen to rest when they die. One for the husband and another space for her. And those spaces had already the grave dug and also protected and secured and kept clean. Whether this is from religion or it is just a creativity is a different story altogether. But what is substantive is that Edith Wambui Otieno knew very well that she would one time die and she would prefer her body to be buried next to her husband, that is S.M. Otieno. And S.M. Otieno happened to die before Edith Wambui. And Edith Wambui had already made funeral arrangement, which of course the clan and the kins of Otieno, the elder brother by the name Ochieng Ogo, was totally opposed to. And this is what raised a lot of concern. And the matter went to court, and the body had to be kept in the morgue for almost 6 months in the Republic of Kenya. What is so interesting is that when Edith Wambui Otieno rejected even to attend the funeral at the village or ancestral land of the late husband and did not recognize and did not neither accept that justice was done to her, even though some radical feminists believers thought it was an outrage against the rights of the widow to deny the widow the right to bury her husband, which of course was upheld by the lower court. The court above ruled it in the opposite way when the matter moved to the appeal. Being defiant against the African customary practice and tradition, and being defiant against the African practice of burial and the belief of ancestral land concept and the distinction between what is a home and what is a house. The widow Edith Wambui still remains and stands out as an icon for our learning and for developing and advancing this topic on jurisprudence that comes from the African thought. Let's put it candidly clear, putting it around the thoughts of Professor John Samuel Mbiti. John Samuel Mbiti, a Kenyan from Kamba community from Kitui, who studied in Switzerland and also taught there and also in Kenya, was one of the most revered personalities when it comes to the African scholarship on religions and philosophy. And John S. Mbiti speaks so much about the living dead. The dead in the African conception are not dead, but they are living, but in spirit. And in that case, there's no gender when we talk of the dead. There is only one thing, the spirit, to which the living are connected, but in spirit. But besides the spiritual world, the spiritual thought that may again be related to religion or to theology or to the African beliefs, let us look at it this way, that Edith Otieno was very much aware and very much at home with the African jurisprudence, which again came to be demonstrated in her story, which I'm going to address right now. At some point, at 75 years of age, on a wheelchair, Edith Wambui Otieno suddenly shocked the world when she decided to get into another marital union with one known as Peter Mbugua, who was at 36 years old, and they were in love. Actually, they wedded at St. Andrew's Church Cathedral in the heart of Nairobi. This one made a big media story, and it took everybody by surprise when the two was deeply in love and they were actually married, and that marriage was done in church. What again occurs to us, since the husband died intestate and the ruling went the direction of the African customary law, and the ruling gave the right of burial to the kins of the late S.M. Otieno, Edith Wambui wrote a will. I've not read it, but what I know for a fact is that Peter Mbugua was nobody, or was persona non grata, after the burial of Edith Wambui Otieno. And this is again explaining to us one important factor in the African marriages The factor is marriage in the African customary law is only done once, and if it is properly done within the law and the legitimacy of the African customary marriage and is celebrated meaningfully, the two are in union perpetually. That is what happened, and there's nothing opposed to this. The reason why I argue it this way is, how comes in this particular will, Edith Wambui Mbugua at this particular point did not include Peter Mbugua as her successor in hereditary or in succeeding her in owning the matrimonial home or keeping the house for himself? And how comes Peter Mbugua cannot be buried next to Edith Wambui Mbugua at the grave space that had been created for the husband, that is S.M. Otieno? If all these issues are not accurately addressed, what remains vividly clear, and I am of the opinion that it is clear, is that concept of connectedness, which is in the Ubuntu jurisprudence, but as well as in the ancestral understanding, in which we find individuals tracing back their ancestries. Of course, Peter Mbugua is persona non grata when it comes to the ancestry or ancestral lineage of Edith Wambui Otieno, the widow of S.M. Otieno, who are still, even after death, in that particular union, and that is the living dead by J.S. Mbiti. Another point we can extract from this particular case and experience in the Republic of Kenya is that Peter Mbugua must follow also his ancestry after he has gotten into a proper marriage afterwards with another lady. And in that case, the question comes, what is the ancestral lineage of Peter Mbugua? What was that union he had with Edith Wambui? With Edith Wambui, he had a relationship which in the African customary law is not a second marriage, because there's nothing like second marriage, even in polygamous setups. The marriage is only the first marriage. Others are not marriages, but they are relationships that are designed within the African customary law as relationships around one husband. But what counts most is the first wife. And that is how African customary marriages and practices hold it. And there are rights and duties upon individuals that engage in that manner. Peter Mbugua, the lover or the one who stayed or who took commitment in church with Edith Wambui Mbugua, is teaching us one important lesson, that whenever such things occur and we want to admit that we are modern in our thinking, our practices, or we are a young generation, or we are free from our decisions or from any boundary, we are still in that connectedness with our ancestral reality. But is it something only to do with masculinity? Is it something that is only favoring men and working against women, these also are not persuaded. I'm opposed to the line of thought that African customary law and its practices and traditions are working against anything to do with women's rights. Not at all. That is not it. The reason is simple. For some of you who must be aware about legal anthropology, there's important concepts, two important concepts. This is the lineage. We have patrilineal lineage and we have matrilineal lineage. Patrilineal means that all hereditary or succession and family rights follow the man by right. When it is matrilineal, of course, all rights in that family succession follow the woman. Of course, we have some Africans that follow the matrilineage, like Chilombwe, found around or across southern African countries, including Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, as well as South Africa and Namibia. But if those practices are acceptable by people, and it is the woman marrying a man, and some women even engage into polygamous families, how comes when it is a man, then it is seen to be negative and working against women? That is actually a balanced type of argument that shouldn't really pity or be levied against African jurisprudence. Ubuntuism. When we talk of connectedness and humanity, it is also not only something surrounding African reality. Let's be careful, and I want to be prudent with you in the sense that I've personally seen even Argentinians going to Europe, to Italy, to Spain, looking for or tracking down the lineage of their parents. Is that African? I've seen Barack Obama, before he became the president, traveling all the way from the United States of America, several miles away, taking a very risky journey, seeking to trace back where his biological father was buried and where he came from. Was he doing it for fun? Not at all. And also it happens among the Caribbeans, among American Africans, but also Africans in Europe, Africans in the United Kingdom, Africans also in Asiatic region, or Africans found in Oceania. Humans have always sought to trace back their identity, finding the origin of their parents. And what is that? Is it not ancestral rights? So let's sometimes be careful when we dismiss any African thought and demean whatever comes from Africa as just a belief, rubbish, or something not pertinent and not helpful at all in the modern world. Actually, the converse is right. It is very important. Today, how many members of the diaspora community in America, in Europe, but also in Asia, seeking to come back and resettle in Africa? Do they do it for fun or for some strange experiences or perceptions? We should get rid of any discriminatory allegation and the way people hold or uphold certain beliefs. I really appreciate Edith Otieno, who turned to be Edith Wambui Mbugua, but also appreciate Mr. Peter Mbogoha in his experience that is now becoming something for our learning, and his name emerging in this scholarly and academic work. Researchers are digging deeper again into the factual reality that would be very fundamental to the family law, family jurisprudence, for our constitutions and posterity, but also for human rights, the equality and fundamental freedoms of individuals, human dignity, but also the cultural values and right to a culture that is within our constitution. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I do believe that this conversation is very relevant and helpful for your understanding.